Hello, and welcome to the Angus and Pete Show. Views and opinions are strictly those of the presenters and their guests and should not be taken as advice. Goodness knows, we're not qualified to advise you about anything. Side effects may include mild amusement and occasional enlightenment with feelings of embarrassment, apathy, disappointment, and pity.
Welcome to episode 30. I'm Angus Pacey.
And I'm Pete Brown, and we are the Angus and Pete Show.
The place where you can listen to two guys chatting about the riveting world of customer engagement.
You know, customer engagement, otherwise known as call centre, contact centre, customer service, customer experience, CX, or whatever else you're calling it this week.
And if you want to find out more about us, then just check us out on LinkedIn. Pete, we always start with the postbag. What have we got this week?
First off, a shout out to Ben from Blackwood in Wales.
Where the hell is Blackwood?
I thought you were going to say, where the hell is Wales? It's in Wales. It's in Wales. I'll look at the map. The most important thing about Blackwood is that it's in Wales and Ben is in Blackwood. So Ben got in touch and said, just to let you know, I love the podcast and I religiously listen to them every time they come out. He's been working in the telecoms industry for 4 years now. He's just getting into the whole contact centre customer experience thing, and he thinks we give some great insights. So another satisfied customer. Thanks for getting in touch, Ben.
That's cool. So I'm in Africa this week, and I've been chatting to Cyrille, who's based here in Nairobi, and he's an avid podcast listener. So he listens to our show and a lot of other stuff as well. And he said he's heard a couple of other podcast shows doing an episode recap every so often. And especially with podcasts that go out weekly, he finds it quite a useful signpost for stuff that he'd forgotten about or stuff that he's missed, because he hasn't listened to every single episode. So he said to me, why don't you guys do an Angus and Pete Show recap?
What a splendid idea for the 30th episode. So, Cyrille, this one's for you. We started to listen to our back catalogue, and to be honest, it was really heavy going, wasn't it, Angus? So we decided to ask our friendly AI assistant to help us out. We gave it the job of having a listen to our journey so far, offering a quick recap of what we've covered and why you might want to give certain episodes a re-listen, just in case you've missed something golden. So, without further ado, here's a quick rundown of our episodes so far.
And we're going to do it as quickly as AI produced it, so hang on to your seats. In episode 1, A is for analysts. This was our introduction and deep dive into the role of analysts in the supply and buy chain, including their business models, relationships with vendors, the impact of their reports like the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And takeaways from that one were analysts are really influential in business decisions, but how they operate are often quite opaque. And reports like the Magic Quadrants are rearview mirrors because they've got long production times. Advice was buyers should not base their decisions solely on these reports and should also question analyst-vendor relationship.
Episode 2 was CX. How did we get here? This was a bit of a history lesson. We covered the evolution of our industry through the concept of call centres into contact centres and beyond, from customer engagement to customer experience. And the takeaways from this episode, understanding history helps to frame the present state. And what really came out was our world has always been and is still full of jargon, and how dangerous it is to just use it without putting it into context. So this was our first real foray into talk to business people about business problems, not features of technology.
Then in episode 3, we jumped into the supply and buy chain. In customer experience, customer engagement, we talked about the roles of vendors, resellers, managed service providers, systems integrators, and we came to the conclusion that supply and buy chain is complex. There are multiple players with often misaligned agendas. So buyers need to thoroughly understand who they're working with and those different relationships.
Episode 4, the AI Exhibitionist, saw Angus and I take a little walk around the Call and Contact Centre Expo in London back in November 2024. What we found was everyone was talking about AI, but all the messaging was the same and there was a real lack of detail. The takeaways there were the focus seemed to be on the technical how, much more than the business why, and critical issues like data security, privacy, environmental impact, and just basic pricing information were missing. And as we come into CC Expo this November in 2025, I'm going to be very interested to see what has changed. Let's hope something has.
Then we jumped into a 3-part series about RFPs, or request for proposals. Part 1 was it's a real fucking problem. And we talked about the benefits and initial steps of the RFP process. And we talked about transparency, how to evaluate things objectively, and also some of the common pitfalls. Takeaways from that episode with RFPs offer the opportunity for transparency and a structure for buyers, but often present a real problem for sellers because there are very poorly defined requirements and unreasonable timelines.
In episode 6, RFP part 2, the right fucking process, we tried to give some advice to buyers, how they can run an effective RFP process, which isn't just about getting their requirements out the door, but it's also about motivating sellers to respond. We spoke about clarity, we spoke about precision, we spoke about telling sellers what outcomes you're looking for. And the takeaways in this episode were buyers should remember they have to sell the opportunity to suppliers as much as they expect a supplier to sell them a solution in response.
And then we ended the series in episode 7 with RFP part 3, the remarkable fucking proposal, which is really focused on the sellers, how they should qualify RFP opportunities, how they can produce high quality responses. And we really picked up on things like honesty, strategic decision making, and really understanding the buyer's motivations. I think the big takeaway out of this was that sellers should question why the RFP is being issued when direct awards are possible, but also honesty, clear communication, and answering the questions directly with bottom line up front is key for successful proposals.
Episode 8, we went back to AI and asked the question, AI in 2025, is it magic or is it menace? We had a few salespeople getting in touch with us saying, we really want to talk about AI, but we don't know enough about the technology. We don't really know what else to say. So we looked at some non-technical ways that sellers can start discussions with buyers around AI. And we suggested that they focus on 4 main areas: the hybrid human AI collaboration, how AI can offer really personalized customer experiences, the ethical considerations of AI, and the whole thing around environment, sustainability, and the actual cost of ownership of AI to any business. Key takeaway was AI discussions should really be focused on business value rather than technical jargon. Just like any other technology sale, it's really important to make sure that you stick to that rule.
In episode 9, we went back to sellers and resellers, looked at how to build a practice in Practice Makes Perfect Part 1. This was a 2-parter. And we covered restructuring your business model to move from selling on-prem solutions to cloud-based services for customer engagement. But we included how vendor relationships need to be understood. The takeaway out of this one was, if you're going to transition to selling cloud solutions, you need to choose your vendor partners carefully. You need to focus on building a well-defined portfolio of services, and your business success will hinge on driving adoption of those services, not just selling the technology.
Practice Makes Perfect Part 2 was episode 10 and focused on some of the common mistakes and pitfalls that prevent sellers from getting their CX practice together. The takeaways there were: prioritize the validation of the problem that you're solving. Make sure you understand your revenue projections, how that's going to change the cash flow in your business. Focus on value delivered to customer, not just features. And understand not just the competitive landscape, but also the vendor landscape too, because you have choices.
In episode 11, EMEA, Why Isn't It Like the USA? This was one of our most listened to episodes. We looked at the differences in Europe, Middle East, and Africa when you compare it to the US for customer experience and customer engagement technologies, and examined the market in a bit of detail. And we highlighted differences in size, different channels that people use, differences in cultures. And the takeaway for those that did not know this is that EMEA is not a single market. And if you're going to be selling into that, you need to do some country-specific research to localize your approach. If you want to be successful, you better be building some local trust and investing in local expertise, because they are critical.
So that episode, Angus, was done back in February 2025, which doesn't seem like a long time ago. But when you look at the changes between then and now, it is a hell of a long time ago. I reckon it's worth revisiting EMEA versus US and how different can it really be in an episode coming soon, don't you?
Yeah, I think that is definitely worth doing.
Episode 12 was a little bit more about EMEA, and we looked at 4 countries: Sweden, Serbia, Saudi Arabia, and South Africa. I don't know why they all begin with S. We looked at the business relationship, how you hold meetings, how decisions are made, what the compliance landscape was like, and crucially, what the protocols are for business entertainment. And we found that every country is different. Punctuality, a key thing for meetings, is handled very differently across those 4 countries. The way that relationships are built is different in all these countries, and cultural nuances significantly impact interactions and the way that you do business in each country. And if you don't understand that and assume one size fits all, you will run into trouble.
It was a good foundation for episode 13, Pitch Perfect. Because once you understand the local market and you've localized everything, you've got to go and sell it to your customers. In this episode, we covered how to make your pitch of customer experience or contact center technology really stand out from the competition. We really highlighted the fact that people want to be told what to buy. So sellers need to make recommendations with limited options, focus on telling really compelling stories and make it interesting, and use real-world examples. This is not about features or technical diagrams. Systems engineers, listen to this episode.
In episode 14, This Little Piggy Went to Market, we looked at how a reseller can take a vendor product and launch it successfully, covering things like understanding vendor partner programs, sales tools, order processes, and enabling every part of their business to get on and do this job successfully. The takeaways can be summarized as: successful go-to-market strategy requires understanding of the full end-to-end process. It requires very considered enablement of sales teams with the right tools and consistent information and clear objectives around what good looks like when you're delivering these services to customers.
Then we jumped into episode 15, AI equals satisfaction guaranteed. And what we were talking about in this episode was what metrics are used in customer experience, how AI is transforming that, and the ethical implications. We came to the conclusions that customer feedback is most accurate when collected right at that point of service. You've got very clear benefits, but there are also risks because of misinterpretation, ethics, privacy, and also cultural and social biases. Buyer beware on this one.
Episode 16 was our first foray into the boardroom, and that's a recurring theme. We've been there a few times. Episode 16 was business case or basket case, and we were really interested in understanding what a business case needs to be in order to get through board approval. We first asked the question, why business cases for customer experience solutions get rejected in the boardroom, focusing on understanding senior executive expectations and the need for really concise, really value-driven arguments when you're presenting this stuff. The takeaways were: sellers often overestimate the capabilities of their champions when it comes to doing their internal selling job for them. So when you're asking someone to present a business case to a board on your behalf, you really need to make sure they're equipped. It is about giving them all the information they need to deliver absolute clarity, focus on the financial metrics, operational benefits, and align completely with what that boardroom strategy is.
Then in episode 17, we got a real expert on. He was the first CX insider that we got onto the podcast. We thought we're saying a load of things. Let's get somebody to validate and critique what we're saying. So we got Steve Blood on. He is a former Gartner analyst. And we found out about what analysts do in their working days. Are they impartial or not? How do Magic Quadrants get produced? And also the relevance of reports. There's some good insights that's worth listening to in that one.
He also confirmed that we got episode 1, A is for analysts, spot on. So thanks for that, Steve. Episode 18 was all about demos. On your marks, get set, demo. We've all seen horrendous demos. We've all seen the nightmare that is tech overload. This episode broke down the whole demonstration process into 6 different types. We tried to make it easy and relatable for sellers. So we spoke about the intro demo, the art of the possible demo, the sales demo, the technical demo, and the look what I've bought demo. And at the end of it, the training demo too. They're all different, but they're all very important in the sales and implementation process. The takeaways on this one were really straightforward. Demos are flexible tools, not fixed events. Each demo needs to have a specific purpose, and it needs to know where it fits in the buying journey.
Then episode 19, CX Insider, Dan on service levels and perils. He really delved into operational efficiency, customer service levels, data transparency, and also some interesting insights on the impact of the pandemic on expectations. So a couple of controversial viewpoints on this one, but I think it's worth a good listen because you got a real insight into the inside workings of how things get reported.
On to episode 20, The Devil is in the Discovery. This one was all about making sure that you understood what the customer was about and what they wanted before you tried to sell them something. We're focusing on understanding their pain points, their future goals, their operational details as stakeholders and execs, and what good looks like for them as a business. We discovered that it's an ongoing process, not just a one-off event. It's about 2 ears, 1 mouth, asking powerful questions and making sure that you engage with as many different types of stakeholder as you can to uncover real problems, real motivations. And again, what came out in this one was avoid that technical jargon too early on. There's a place for it, but it isn't when you're discovering business pain and problems.
And then we jumped onto episode 21, CX Insider Terry on the RFP games. This gave us a real insight into what it's like at that coalface. He's very well experienced in the public sector sales game, and he took us through a lot of those formal procurement processes and highlighted out a couple of really interesting things like the types of tenders, full and fair. Sometimes they're just beating up incumbents. You've got fantasy shoppers and also free consultancies, and also what the strategies are for success. He highlighted out, RFPs often prioritize cost over quality, but if you understand the buyer's true intent and whether a tender is rigged or not, then you're in a good place.
In episode 22, we went back into the boardroom with Sign-Off, the CFO, and we wanted to understand what makes the chief financial officer tick. When he's evaluating your proposals, when he's evaluating technology investments, what motivates him to make the right decision? He's focused on the financial health of the business. We had somebody say to us, well, I lost that deal. We were the cheapest. I don't get it. The takeaway from this one was CFOs look way beyond price. They're not just focusing on how much stuff costs, but they're focusing on the bigger picture, strategic alignment, financial viability, return on investment, total cost of ownership, risk mitigation. They're all about longer term benefits and scalability, and risk is the key thing in many of their considerations.
And then we built on that theme of evaluating a business case. In episode 23, AI business benefit, is it here that? We really unpacked whether AI is truly delivering tangible business benefits in customer experience and contact centers yet. We looked back at an academic study, delved into and challenged some of the industry hype around time savings and labor costs, return on investment. And we came to the conclusion that initial studies are showing that there are minimal, although positive savings from AI, but you've also got to invest in support and training if you want to get AI adoption going in your organization. But currently, the research is showing that the impact on labor costs and the structure of the workforce is not crystal clear yet. We still have to wait to see how that pans out.
That brought us on to episode 24, The Outbound Odyssey. And in this one, we tried to tackle an old chestnut, outbound dialing, how it's evolving, and the shift towards proactive contact using digital channels, not just voice. We discovered that dialers are still relevant, but messaging is becoming the default for proactive contact due to the high engagement rates that it has. However, voice is still crucial because people want to speak to people when things get emotional.
Then in episode 25, CX Insider Phil on Sales Engineer, we went back to real world experience from people in roles. We interviewed Phil, the senior sales engineer, man of many years of experience, and we discussed the role of sales engineers, their involvement in RFPs, how they can influence opportunities, and that critical relationship between sales engineers, product managers, salespeople. And Phil was trying to persuade us that sales engineers are crucial for selling product value and capability, not just technical features. Sales engineers should use their eyes, ears, and mouth in the right order. all which I thought was really, really good insights. I don't think too many of them follow his advice, though.
No. So sales engineers, solutions engineers, pre-sales people, go and have a listen to episode 25. And when you've done that, listen to episode 26. It's the proposition, stupid, was an attempt to make sure we all understand the difference between brand, product, and sales proposition, and why of those three things, having a strong customer-focused sales proposition is absolutely key when it comes to strategic differentiation and actually making it easy for salespeople to have conversations with customers. The takeaway was really simple. Your brand shapes perception, your product solves problems, but it's your proposition that promises the value and brings it all together. If you haven't got a proposition, you haven't got a business.
I feel, Pete, you're giving a perfect segue into episode 27. Go to market. Whose job is it anyway? We unpacked the roles and responsibilities in a vendor context, specifically looking at a SaaS product go-to-market. We looked at the role of product management, product marketing, sales ops. And the takeaway from that one is that the product house is the one that defines what the product is and why it matters. Product marketing create all the contact and ensure that that value proposition is aligned to the market and differentiates. And then sales enablement is absolutely critical so that you get consistent messaging across all the different internal and also partner sales teams. So this is a must listen to if you are thinking about taking your own product to market.
We went back to the boardroom in episode 28, CX Insider, Vinay on CX in the boardroom. Vinay Palmer is an exec. He's sat in many boardrooms. He's also sat in an agent's chair in a contact center. And it was really interesting listening to him explain what CX means in the boardrooms that he sits in. He told us that lived experience is really key when you're discussing and educating your peers in the boardroom about the value and the importance of CX, and also helping the board take the right approach to investments, particularly when it comes to AI. Key takeaways were that boards really need to understand what CX is, and it's not technology. It's about all the customer touch points. It's about the fact that consistent customer experience is great. Inconsistency kills trust. And finally, boards often prioritize tactical short-term gains over long-term strategic value. So don't turn up with a 10-year ROI. It's not going to fly.
And then in the episode before this one, episode 29, Newsbeat in June 2025, we took a look at 3 articles that had popped up in our news feeds that we thought were interesting. An article on humans versus AI and the need for human touch and context. We looked at Gartner's predictions on AI's impact on workforce reductions. And we also came up with, I think you did, Pete, came up with the idea of Uber agents for contact centers. So you got creative on this one.
I did get creative on that one.
And then we looked at how can you make your staffing more efficient and reduce agent churn by using freelance agents or Uber agents in your terminology. So I think it was a bit of a change in direction on that one. We decided to look at the news. So, Pete, I'm going to say that doing what Cyrille suggested is bloody difficult. I think we've absolutely perfected sounding like the index at the back of a book.
I think you're right. Listen, we're only doing what we were asked to do. So, Cyrille, that's a wrap on our review of the first 29 episodes of the Angus and Pete Show. And we hope it's given you the overview that you wanted and perhaps encourage you and some of our other listeners to go and listen to some of this stuff you might have missed or forgotten about and re-immerse yourself in the Angus and Pete Show experience.
If this is the first episode that you're listening to, just let me clarify, this is not a cure for insomnia or a sleep aid.
We'll be back next time with episode 31.
In the meantime, follow the Angus and Pete Show page on LinkedIn for news and notifications, and message us directly to tell us what you want us to talk about, how we're doing, and please keep that post bag bulging.
The show's available on all your favourite podcast platforms, so listen, like, subscribe and share to help us spread the word.
And after that riveting whistle-stop tour, Pete, you are not going to escape without a joke of the week, and I think we need one.
Well, we've just covered 29 different topics, so it's very difficult to home in on one of them. So I'm going to do something neutral. This guy goes into a restaurant on the shores of the Mediterranean and orders the octopus. And the waiter looks at him and says, "It takes 4 hours." The guy says, 4 hours? Why so long? And the waiter says, "The octopus keeps turning off the stove." And it's a visual joke, Angus. The chef wrestling with it's a visual joke.
You don't have to explain it, Pete. You promised me that it was a really funny joke.
Well, it's the best I can do. Cheers, Angus.
Cheers, Pete.
Thanks for tuning in to the Angus and Pete Show. Remember, it's based on the personal views and opinions of the hosts and their guests. If you're feeling aggrieved or litigious, take a chill pill. There's already enough stress in the world. Don't forget to follow our page on LinkedIn and subscribe on your favourite podcast platform for more episodes. We'll see you next time. Oh, and tell your friends.